Ladies and gentlemen, back with another video. Kind of want to talk about one of my pastimes, and that's music and vinyl collecting. Ever since I was in about the 10th grade, I always wanted to be a DJ. Like how they used to have those MTV spring breaks. That was my dream. And I begged my parents to buy me a set of turntables, which of course they never did. And it was probably a wise decision because at the time, when I was able to get my own money, I bought some turntables and never did anything with it. So there's that. They had a little bit of foresight and wisdom that I didn't have in my younger days. But when it was time for me to move out of the house, most parents give their children towels or forks and knives, toasters, essentials like that they'll need to move and live on their own. Well, for me, when I left the house, I basically took the vinyl records that were in the basement and told my father that these are mine now. And that was that. And so I have been buying records for years. And I got to the point where every so often I would get bored and say, you know what, I want to see what's out there. So I would go to my local record store. And one day I walked in and found the record that quite frankly changed my life. And I'm going to show it to you right here. Now this may be some people would look at this record and say, yeah, that's not really a rare item. Or they may look at it and say it may be overrated. But for me, this record changed. This was a game changer. Let me show it to you. Now I hope you can see that. This is Sunra Languidity, 1978. What is the record company that this even came out on? 1978 on the Philly Jazz record. The the catalog number is PG 666, which would scare many people away from it off the bat. But this record, I walk into the store and it caught my eye instantly. I walked straight in and saw this record and was like, what is that? The name sunra, it had rang a bell to me. It sounded somewhat familiar, but it was also not familiar at the same time. And I'm looking at this man on the cover of it. There's this grainy photo that's like in a purple tint of a man who looks like he's in a trance. So I bought this record, took it home, put it on my record player, and it was like perfect timing. It's a jazz fusion album, so it doesn't have the weird percussion elements that like hard bop or free jazz has. There's some real driving structure to the rhythm, and just some of the things that he would say, it was almost like chants on this record. For instance, there's a song, There Are Other Worlds, that they haven't told you of. And this was my introduction to him and June Tyson. And Marshall Allen is on this record. John Gilmore is on this record, which are people who I hold near and dear to my heart now. But back then, I had no idea what it was. But anyway, long story short, my encounter with this record led me to looking at movies like Space is the Place, if any of you are familiar with it. It made me encounter the documentary Make a Joyful Noise. Classic stuff. But I wanted to talk about a quote that I got from Sun Ra I believe it was off of Make a Joyful Noise. And, I'm going to paraphrase this quote. But in the movie, Sun Ra says that the youth in this country are having problems because they've been raised to value freedom and not discipline. And I thought that was one of the heaviest things I had ever heard up to that point. It takes me back to what I would later study out of the Kabbalion about polarity, where, opposites only differ in degree. So when you take something that would seem to be an opposite, on opposite ends of the pole, If I'm a person, I want to seek freedom and not discipline, because freedom tends to lead to pleasure in our minds, but discipline leads to pain, discomfort. But when you really break it down and take it a step further, when we as people pursue freedom, it's going to lead to us being disciplined in some sort of way. For instance, if we pursue freedom, the freedom that, let's say, allows us to hang out with our friends and drink on a daily basis and not go to work. Yeah, we're going to enjoy that freedom in the short term, but in the long term, we're going to be disciplined by the consequences that come from us not being able to handle our responsibilities. So if I don't go to work, I'm going to be disciplined by not being able to pay my bills, and then I'm going to end up being kicked out on the street, where I'm going to have to find some sort of discipline so that I can get back to my freedom, if that makes sense. You know, if we pursue discipline, if we do the things that suck in the short term, they typically lead to enjoyable things in the long term. And oddly enough, I would never have thought that a jazz musician would lead me to this type of consciousness. But that's basically what happened. You know, I learned my first lesson before I got into any kind of spirituality or any of that stuff came from a jazz musician giving me game on polarity in a way that just blew my mind. To think that many of the problems that we have in this world come from us seeking freedom first and foremost instead of discipline is like a revolutionary idea in the United States. And so I don't know how the stars aligned or why I was meant to encounter this record, but in all honesty, Sunra Languidity changed my life. It opened my mind. It led me down a path that I never would have imagined going down otherwise. So this is always going to hold a special place in my heart. Period.